Hello, everyone, and welcome back to If Margaritas Could Talk, the Over 40 Chronicles podcast, where the drinks are cold, the stories are hot, and the laughter is always flowing. I'm your host, Tracy Black, and today we're diving into a topic that we all know a little too well, dating after 40. Now, let me just say, dating at any age has its challenges, but after 40 is a whole new ballgame. You've got a mix of wisdom, self-awareness, and maybe just a little less patience for nonsense. But let's face it, there's no shortage of stories, the good, the bad, and the downright hilarious. And since we're all about keeping it real, you won't want to miss this one. So grab your margarita or a drink of choice, and let's dive right in. All right, let's set the stage here. Dating after 40 is like navigating a maze. There's the online world where you got to swipe left or right, feels like you're kind of playing a game on your phone. And then there's the real life connections that sometimes feel more like trying to find a needle in a haystack. Let's talk about those first impressions. Has anyone had a wow moment? Like the kind of date that just sets the bar so high that when you almost, couldn't believe it. Was it a romantic setting? A picnic overlooking the ocean, a fun game of miniature golf. What about going to the fair and riding the Ferris wheel while enjoying a delicious bout of cotton candy? What was the level of chivalry in the early 1900s? And is chivalry dead today? Do we have higher expectations or do we throw caution to the wind? These are all the questions I'm asking today, and I hope my listeners can give a little bit of input back. The other thing that we want to talk about is there a new set standard that men and women are looking for? I know most people at this age have either been married and or divorced or have grown children. That does mean that dating could be easier. Yes? No? Because you've been there, kind of done that sort of thing. So is it easier? Does age play a role, or what is left out there? I'd love to hear your input. It's those rare moments that keep us hopeful, right? Now, we can't talk about dating without getting into the weird stuff, the ones that leave you questioning reality. So let's get into it. The worst stories, the ones that almost made you swear off dating for good. The bad dates, the ghosting, the crazy surprises. I did a poll, and let me tell you, the jury is out. Melanie from the Gram says she had been talking to a gentleman for about 2 weeks. And in that 2 weeks, lots of conversations about work, jobs, family, history dating, so on and so forth. They finally decide to meet up for a dinner date, and she says the type of work he is in, some kind of form of construction or what have you. But he rolled his sleeves up and he sort of had like lots of cuts and, different things on his hands and arms and so on and so forth. And she sat across the table from him the majority of the date, picking at his scabs and leaving them on the table. So I don't know about you, but the huge ick factor came right over me hearing that. I was like, okay, so what do you do in that moment? Do you say, hey, I have a really good lotion or I have a really good cream for that. Is everything okay? Or do you sort of just like dismiss yourself from the table to use the bathroom, get yourself back together, and then just be like, okay, it's just one date. We got to get through it. This is disgusting. I guess I'm better off just not saying anything. So it's those cringy bad moments where you have to determine whether or not, that's something that you could put up with, or maybe it's a nervous disorder. We just don't know, right? So you're just minding your own business, having this date, and somebody does that. And, what kind of position does that put you in? First of all, it's really ick. It's up there. One of the bad stories for sure. I feel for her. Now, Then I heard from a different guy named Dylan, and he says that he had been talking to a gal for a little while and, you know, having good conversations and they seemed to have some things in common, and they decided to meet for a coffee date. And the coffee date then was going well, and, you know, her pictures looked like her pictures online and, what have you. He ends up, then, they hit it off so well. So they end up getting through the date and deciding to maybe have some dinner together. So they do the dinner, have a few drinks, decide then after that they're going to hook up. And so obviously, great, wonderful, going to go hook up. It's a good time. They're into each other, whatever. Wasn't until the next morning that he had a knock on his door, and it was the police at his doorstep. And it turns out that the young gal who claimed to be 26 was actually only 17. So this poor guy is now like, hey, what? And ended up with like a charge against him, and he lost his job and like all this stuff. So, I mean, I don't know. I think you got to be vetting. You got to really, I think it's different for guys than it is for women. I mean, we want to know all the things. So anyways, my gosh, that's a note for me. I can't even imagine dealing with that. Or things like, no-show texts. The sudden change of plans, or even worse, the dreaded, I've got to take this call mid-date. If you've been there, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Let me just say, after 40, your tolerance for stuff, I imagine, is, for all of us is lower. But hey, sometimes those bad dates lead to the funniest stories, right? It's all a part of the experience.
Are you ready to add a little sparkle to your life? Let me introduce you to Kindred Fusion, the ultimate destination for permanent jewelry. That's right, no more worrying about clasps or losing your favorite pieces. With Kindred Fusion, you can enjoy beautiful, seamless jewelry that is as unique as you are. Imagine a stunning bracelet or necklace that feels like a second skin. Sounds amazing, right? At kindredfusion.com, you can explore a gorgeous selection of styles that fit every personality and occasion. So head on over to kindredfusion.com today and discover the magic of permanent jewelry.
So what do you think of this? A guy you end up meeting offers you to buy you a drink and then orders you a water, and he orders himself a beer and then asks you if you would like a sip of his beer. So imagine, my gosh, that this guy's roaming around out there thinking he's all that in a bag of chips and offering that kind of, look at me, I'm a good catch. I don't think so, bro. It's a real thing. It happened. But anyway, let's not leave on a sour note. Let's talk about the good stuff. The stories where you met someone for a moment that made you think, wow, maybe this could be forever. Maybe it was the first time you connected with someone in a really long time who got you. Or maybe it was a date that went so smoothly that you were shocked. Good dates are also part of the mix, and not everything has to be a nightmare. Meeting someone, I think, for the first time can be very difficult, but I can honestly say being in the right place and with the right person can be great. Sparks fly, laughter, and, maybe even a little bit of flirting. That is the right stuff right there. It's those little sparks that make us remember why we keep putting ourselves out there. And, as we get older, the stakes feel different. We are all about quality. And if you're on a date, it's because you generally want to be there. So you're not looking for games, you just want the real thing. And that brings me to the next point, which is talking about navigating that balance. Like, when do you know if someone's worth pursuing? And how do you gauge if it's the real deal or just another temporary connection? Let's not forget the biggest thing of all, which are those red flags. I think this is a good one for both men and for women. Dating challenges, I have lots of girlfriends, lots of friends, male and female, from even, high school and on. And those who are single out there are saying, it's just a nightmare. And everybody is very disingenuous, or the other thing, they're very just disconnected. They don't really want to put the energy in. And, that's hard. That's hard, especially when you're sitting from across the table from somebody and you're genuinely trying to put the invested time in to find someone because you're ready. You know what I'm saying? I think for men, the number one thing that was part of the red flag stuff was women posting photos of themselves that are dated, right? Dated 5 years, 10 years back. And then, the eventual goal is to meet up, obviously. And then when you meet up, what are you going to say to somebody when that person they look like their pictures, but it's not like their new version of themselves, right? So if we're older and we've got wrinkles and things have shifted and, maybe we have a few more extra pounds, whatever the case might be, I think it's really important to be transparent. And I think, men are visual. So that was like the number one biggest complaint, I think, for most men. I think for most women, with the online poll, it came down to like men being serial daters on every single app. Like, why do you got to do that? And if you're really looking for something, a true connection, you're going to be in one place, you're going to be genuinely looking, you're going to be, you're going to be invested. Whereas I think if you're just throwing it out there to everybody and anybody, it seems very disingenuous. And I think that's the number one thing for women was, that was a giveaway. Not only that, but for both men and women, when you're on a date or you're sitting across the table from somebody, another red flag is when someone is really still talking about their ex and they seem to be, it's a continual thing. It keeps being brought up throughout the conversation. Maybe that means that's a red flag that person's not really being genuine about their timeline or genuine about whether or not they are really ready emotionally, the emotional aspect of being ready to date again. So these are kind of some of the things I think for a lot of people to think about as they're getting out into the world. And, I once read a book, the Steve Harvey's Think Like a Man, Act Like a Lady. And I read it before I got married for the second time. And it taught me a lot as a woman that it is really important to understand how men operate, what they're thinking, how they behave, what are the keepers, what are the things they do when they're really not interested. So ladies, I would get yourself a copy if you're out in the marketplace. It is a really, really great tool. And, at the end of the day, if you're invested, it is about you, right? And the other thing, let's touch on another topic, which is like communication. Communication is so key. And sometimes it's about trusting your gut. So when kind of red flags and stuff are popping up and somebody's making excuses or they're, you see them on every dating site and they've been on there for, you've been on and off again, maybe for a year, a couple of years, or you shut it down, you turn it back on, whatever. I think when you see the same people that are still out there, that's a really, really, really big red flag. So keep that in the back of your mind. But let's not forget that it is still okay to have fun, take chances, and most importantly, laugh at the ridiculousness of it all. Because let's face it, dating after 40 can be, kind of a bit of a roller coaster. All right. So before we wrap this up, let's end on a high note. We've talked about the ups and downs, but I do have a couple of questions. What is like the one piece of advice you'd give someone who is starting to date after 40? Is it, not to take it too seriously? Is it to enjoy the ride? Or maybe just to remember that no matter what, you're still completely fabulous, men and women that applies to? I think we all need reminders sometimes it is about enjoying the journey and not just focusing on the destination. Whether you find your soulmate tomorrow or just make a new friend, dating after 40 can still be a blast. So here's to more margaritas, more laughs, and maybe even a few more great dates. All right, folks, that's it for today's episode of If Margaritas Could Talk. Thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you to my wonderful listeners who shared their stories. If you've got your own dating tales, drop them in the comments or send us a message. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, remember to follow, like, and subscribe on your favorite listening platform. We can also be found at www.ifmargaritascoulddtalk.com, on the gram, on YouTube, Facebook, and more. Hashtag podcastdiva. Whether you're swiping, meeting, or just living your best life, keep those margaritas chilled and your heart open. Cheers to everyone.